All right, hey everybody, I'm Mr. Danforth. I know some of you, I don't know others, but this is me. This is little Danforth. I grew up in Zaire, Congo, and my early childhood, all the way on until college years, basically 17 years of my life were in Zaire. I speak a couple African languages. Lingala is one, and it's a heart language. I grew up speaking it. My brother and I grew up in northwest Congo. I did marry my childhood sweetheart, my boarding school sweetheart. There's a lot of stories. I can tell you my hero story at some point if you care to ask me that. It's much embellished and over the top. But anyway, that's me. What were we doing in Africa? My parents are Christian missionaries over there. So as far as cultural diversity goes, that's kind of the worldview that I grew up in, was this Christian worldview. And what I want to talk to you, what I want to share with you tonight is the question of cultural diversity. What happens when there's a wealth disparity, right? What happens when there's haves and have-nots? How do you deal with that? How do we deal with differences? And to do that, I want to share a challenging quote and a story. So a challenging quote and a story, that's all we're doing. Challenging quote is this. It's from the Christian Holy Book. To those who much is given, much will be required. JFK quoted this when he was giving a speech. I believe he was starting something called the Peace Corps. But from those who much is given, much will be required. This is a verse that kind of haunts me. I mean, why? Because I grew up in a context where I have been given much, and I knew it. This is a picture of me right here. My hair looks about the same now. And this is a Congolese kid. So, have I been given much? That's my home. I went to school at UC Davis and UW Wisconsin eventually. I've got an American passport. On this side of the equation, this kid, born in the same hospital as me, grew up, climbed the same trees, all that sort of thing, went to this kind of a school with maybe a log to sit on and chalkboard, and lived in this kind of a house, a mud hut. Family might have had one bull. If they were really wealthy, maybe a bicycle. I mean, people live on very, very little. In Congo, Zaire was one of the poorest nations in the world at the time. And eventually, I left because of civil war that happened. And that poor kid, born in the same hospital, grew up in the same place, had to stay, right? And so I deal with this question, from those who much is given, much will be required. Like that. That's something that I carry with me. So I want to talk about poverty. I want to talk about international poverty. I want to talk about that disparity, and has many symptoms. One of these hands are leprous. I grew up on a mission station that had a hospital and a church and all kinds of stuff I'll show you in a minute, but it was a former leper colony. And so a lot of the people there had leprosy, which, boy, leprosy, right? Leprosy takes away your feeling of pain. You don't feel pain. So you think about that, oh, that'd be awesome. I'd be like superhuman. But it's actually pretty rotten, because you step on a nail and you don't even know you stepped on it. They try to take your shoe off, or you notice there's something like, or you're cutting carrots, right? And you don't even know, right? Awful. And then if you live in a mud hut, and during the night the rats might come down and they'll actually chew on your wounds, you won't even wake up. Leprosy. So that's a symptom. Poverty has many symptoms. I could go into that. These are just different maps that show like Human Development Index, literacy rates, water quality, access to even just hunger and or security, or internally displaced peoples. I just want you to notice that there's a big difference between Congo and the United States. Congo and they're pretty much on the opposite end of the spectrum every time. So I've got, again, that picture of me, chubby little me, and that chubby little Congolese child, and there's a disparity there. There's a real disparity there. So these are all different aspects. You guys know this. You've been indoctrinated to this. We have our senior service projects and our GPS trips. So this is something we need to weigh. Now, for me, once again, from my Christian perspective, one of the core principles of Christianity is that we worship a God who gives, who condescends, who actually creates the world and then sees the destruction of it and comes down, takes on human form, and and submits himself to death, a hideous death, to take on the pain and the evil of humanity and conquer that death and conquer sin in the process and then rise again. But there's a process of giving, of not grasping that divinity, but actually submitting, humbling, and coming down and loving us. And I think that's ultimately where I want to go with this. Is this love is going to be the answer. So loving your neighbor, you've heard that. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's the golden rule, right? Here's refugees in Eastern Congo, in the Kivu province, in IDPs. So how does love your neighbor play out? Once again, you're familiar with poverty. You're also familiar with some of the responses. The dude in the middle there is my dad. He's the Johnny Appleseed of Central Africa. He collects fruit from all over the world, tropical fruit, not apples. They don't grow well there, but he's tried them. He has a garden of over 400 different types of fruit. He does ag development in Africa. He's done that for the past 50 years now. He's just retiring this year, finally. And I grew up with him doing this stuff, trying to improve people's diets by giving them protein, vitamins, that sort of thing. My mom is a nurse. She works in a hospital. I just wanted to show you, this is where I grew up. This is my house right here. A little mission station. This is one hill, another hill over there, that's where the hospital is. So my home's right there, and we had a goat program down here, a sheep program, chickens, ducks, pigs, rabbits, fish ponds down there. So the rabbits actually, I don't know if you knew this, but rabbits produce manure that is not hot. It's not high in nitrogen, so you can put it directly on your garden, which is kind of a cool thing. So my dad had that with his tree program here. But when you have like 200 rabbits, you wake up in the morning and several will be dead. They'll just be dead. So Dad scratches his head. He's like, well, this is a resource. No one can eat these because they died of unknown causes, because there's just a bunch of them. So he started a crocodile program, because crocodiles have a great conversion of, yeah, I mean, and people can eat crocodiles. Like, we're trying to feed people in any way we can. Dad had a reforestation plot out here because I don't know if you knew this, but the Sahara Desert is advancing 7 kilometers every year. And he was like, we need to do something about that. So trying different reforestation trees, cattle, donkeys. There was also carpentry and mechanics and the hospital and the church. Like, everything was going on. Like, very, very busy trying to meet people's needs. This is the context I grew up in. Now for my story. I think you got the context. I think you sense the burden. By the way, from those whom much is given, much will be required. If you think you're not with me in the much is given category, if your parents make more than 30 grand a year, 30 grand, you are in the top 1% globally. 30 grand, that's poverty level here in the United States. I mean, that's right there, right there. Of course, there's relative and absolute poverty. There's different scales that we look at, but I just want you to be aware that we're privileged. We are in that group, especially here at Culver. We're in that group. And my challenge is we need to love. We need to give. Love our neighbor as ourselves. So, I've got a hero story of an exemplar of loving your neighbor, okay? And it starts with my school's equivalent of a senior service project. So this is my boarding school that I went to in the middle of Congo. It's the Ibangi Academy. This is my entire school right here. This was the girls' hall, the boys' hall, dining room stuff in the middle, classrooms down there. We had a senior service, well, it was just a Christian service project. And so we all had to do service work in the community. And my job was, I chose to do Sunday school down in the village of Boyasabanga, which was just nearby. So every Wednesday I'd go down and work with David Boismore, and we'd prepare a lesson for Sunday school on Sunday. And then I would walk back to the dorm. And I was off campus, you guys know how this is, and I got to get back on campus before a certain time. Like right now, we're probably all looking at our watches going, oh boy, we got to get somewhere right now. Supper was at 5:30. Supper was at 5:30 every day, sharp, and I had lingered down there with Dabe a little bit longer on this particular day. And so I was hurrying back up through the village. I'm going up through the village as quickly as I can, and if I'm late, I get punished. Just like you, except what I end up have to do is, because I'm a high schooler, I'm a sophomore at the time, I'd have to like move rocks, or I'd have to take a machete, which is it's a coop, it's a long bent blade, and cut the grass with it, certain swath of grass. Manual labor is basically the punishment I get. So I don't want to be late. So I'm hurrying up the hill back to campus as quickly as I can, and I see up ahead a dude that looks awfully like this. Okay? So I'm going up the hill like this. He's going to cross my path. He's going perpendicular to me. We're going to cross paths. I don't have a picture of him because I was a sophomore, but he looked, this could be him. Why? Because he had leprous hands. He had hands that were all gnarled like that. One leg was longer than the other, so he was walking with a limp. He had under his arm a satchel, and when I got closer, he had about as many teeth as this dude. This is abject poverty. I'm going to cross paths with this guy going back up. And in my heart of hearts, I thought, I don't have time for this. Why? Because I anticipated that he was going to ask me for something. See, the motto in Zaire at that point in time was, Kotuna ezama bete. It's a proverb that the president passed around. It just means to ask is not a bad thing. And so all day long, if I ever walked through the village, kids were always asking me, other kids were asking me, give me your shoes, give me your shirt, give me your bicycle, give me your watch. I get worn out by it. My best friend growing up actually started giving away his clothes at one point. When he got back home, his mom was pretty mad at him because he gave away all his stuff. The need was overwhelming. It's the poorest nation in the world at the time. Anyway, I see this guy, we're going to cross paths, and I'm thinking, oh no, he's going to ask me for something. And because he's older, he's an elder, I didn't want to disrespect him. And so to say no is very difficult when you don't want to disrespect somebody. Very awkward. You have to somehow turn it into, put it on yourself, that kind of thing. It takes a lot of maneuvering, and it takes a lot of time. And I don't have time. I got to get home. It's 5:30. I got to get back before the supper bell rings. So we cross paths. Once again, remember this is a hero story. We cross paths, and the guy greets me. He greets me in Baka, which is a relief because I don't speak Baka. I greet him in Lingala, and I say the one phrase I know in Baka, which is Miti Bakako, and he just smiles real big, and that's when I see he doesn't have all his teeth. We kind of nod, and I show my respect, and then I continue on my path. I'm good, I'm golden, I'm gonna make it, it's time. Then he calls me back. Eddie! I turn around respectfully, I come back, and I'm getting ready to sign to him, because it is a cross-cultural thing. Believe it or not, there's no one who speaks African. Little side note, never ask anyone, do you speak African? So there's multilingual issues going on here. I go back, I'm ready to sign. Look, I gotta go, that kind of thing. And he's smiling, he reaches into his bag and he pulls out something. I'm like, I can't now. He pulls out this ear of corn. And I'm thinking he's trying to sell this. He's got this ear of corn in his bag. He had this rattan satchel. He pulls it out from under his armpit and he holds it out. I'm like, I don't have money. I'm signing that. I don't want to trade for my watch. I don't have time for this. I'm trying to do it respectfully. And he smiles, that big toothless grin. And he's just nodding and holding it out like this. And I'm going, no, I can't. I don't have the money. I gotta go. And he takes my hand and he puts the ear of corn in it. And he smiles real big. And he walks away. I'm left standing there holding up the ear of corn. It's a hero story. Did you catch what just happened? The poorest man on the freaking face of the earth just blessed me. Why? Because he was loping home from his garden. He had more than enough food for that evening meal. And he ran across a young boy, sophomore in high school, who looked like he could use a little bit for supper. And he looked at me, and out of the generosity in his heart, he condescended and chose to bless me. He had the time for me. He had the excess wealth to give to bless me. I mean, poverty has many symptoms. It's all about your hands. Poor hands grasp. Rich hands give. So let's look at this again. Some symptoms of poverty. Sometimes we don't have time. Poverty can take that form. Sometimes we don't have respect for the people around us. Sometimes we're slaves to our own selfishness and greed. Sometimes we're not content with what we have. Sometimes we don't have humility. Sometimes we're isolated. We don't have a sense of community and belonging. Sometimes our soul is underdeveloped. From those whom much is given, much will be required. That man gave me a gift maybe the greatest gift I've ever been given. That ear of corn, I couldn't eat it. I mean, it's sacred. It was a beautiful thing. I kind of set it on my shelf. I thought maybe it wouldn't decay because it was holy. It was right? But it did. I had to throw it away. But it's a burden. From those who much is given, much will be required. So learn from my mistake. Learn from my mistake. Remember that just because we got a lot of money doesn't mean we're the ones who always go around giving. Because poverty is relative. It's kind of like economics. Everyone has an opportunity cost. Everyone is rich in something. Use what you're rich with to give to others. So, we all have abundance in something. We all have abundance in something. We all have needs. We need to love our neighbors. We need to love our neighbors. That's my takeaway right there. It's all about your hands. Poor hands grasp. Rich hands give. So remember that little ear of corn. Freely you've received. Here's another verse. Freely you've received, freely give. So love God, love your neighbor. Go forth. That's what I have to say.